discussion. I would like to thank Reuters to enable us, Leader Magazine, to coordinate and moderate this session. And I would like to welcome Madam Bharti Sinha, who is the Executive Director with the Association of Geospatial Industries. We have also with us Mr. Pratap Padode, who is the Founder and Director, Smart Cities Council India. Welcome you, sir. And we also have with us Mr. Sunil McKenna, who is the Senior Vice President, Data and Operations with Scient, and also young budding entrepreneur, Rohan Verma, the Director of Map My India, one of the pioneers in mapping technologies in the country. And we have two distinguished guests with us this evening, Mr. Prashant Pillai, who is the Country Head, Tax and Accounting Business and Market Development, South Asia, with Thomson Reuters, and Mr. David Hickman, who is the Head International Business Development Government. He has overseen the implementation of smart cities across 1,600 jurisdictions, perhaps. So, quite a balance of our panel, two advocacy groups, one from the industry and one from the smart city perspective per se, and two industry veterans from their own respective things, and one global giant who is really helping the smart city narrative going across. So going further, I would just put my first question to Mr. Padode as to how he sees the smart city narrative unfurling in India. Because as I was having a discussion with David just before the roundtable, understanding the motive is very important. Because it's all about the cool things around smart cities, but somewhere or the other it's a series of smart decisions which have to be taken across. So that's why we've kept the topic as bolstering the basics, if in order to realize the smart city dream. So are we focusing around that? How are you seeing amongst all the energy, the challenges, the 20 cities coming up from the 100 odd ones? What's your view about it?
First of all, thank you for being part of this session. So I think you raised a question about motive. Actually, we haven't come across this question so far, which is, I think, very basic. So
I would say the motive. Yeah.
So, first of all, let's understand that world over, smart cities is actually a movement taking place currently. So it's not something that, the Western world is far more developed. And yet there is a smart cities movement taking place. So I think we're getting it wrong there, where people feel that this is a sort of a Western copy and paste kind of a situation happening here, because if that were so, it should be only happening in emerging countries and developing countries. Why in the developed world? So I think it's a movement where there is the pressures on cities is growing so rapidly that it's time that cities have to get smarter and smarter in order to analyze the data that they're getting and therefore reform the cities for the future, for continued sustenance of the happiness and security of their citizens. In India, I think the government has been smart to adapt this in a way that it was not possible. We don't have the resources to develop the whole city and make it completely smart. So the focus has been area-based smart city development. And so all the monies that are being provided in the Smart Cities mission are for development of certain areas. So all these 20 cities which have got selected, there are actually areas within those 20 cities which are going to be developed. And therefore the monies are not enough for the city. But then I think the motivation of money is what's drawing city administrations to actually toe the line. And the hope is that the other parts of the city will emulate that kind of smartness, which should be reflected in probably real estate prices of that area across the city, and therefore overall city development will take place. We have to, bring in the private sector monies, because they have helped India build so much of infrastructure in the last 10 years as well. I mean, 45% of our infrastructure in the last 10 years has been built by private investment. Of late last 3 years, the capital has been shy. But then that's the motive, that we bring in that investment, but we need to first do our own bits. The government is sort of doing its bit and trying to attract more so that there is overall investment in this.
I would like to bring in David just after this. Is this all about money, or is it a different kind of an experience, the smart city movement as Mr. Badode talked about, how to bring about that movement?
I don't have a red light, so I'll speak up.
Yeah.
I think a great deal of it is about running and operating a city requires funding. It's just a fact. So you have to think about that. I agree exactly with what he said is, it's a movement. We have to look at smart cities, at how do we make, what is the definition of a smart city? So I think that's a big part of it, but in a couple of the key primary objectives are self-sustainability for the government. Let's start making decisions that enable governments to be self-sufficient. If you're self-sufficient, you're able to provide a better quality of service to your citizens. I think that's the big key. But he also made a very strong point here that in order to really achieve this, we're going to need investment from corporations. But if we're going to get investment from the private sector, then we need to look to find ways to make it easier for the private sector to invest with us. And part of that is securing their ability to purchase property, providing them an easier way to acquire a building so that they can do or to set up a building, or to ensure that when they go to pay their property taxes, it's all going to be set up, or ensure that they're going to have the proper infrastructure they need to operate their plant. Power is there. So we have to think about what is it the governments need to do in terms of infrastructure to make it easier for corporations to invest. I think that's a big part of what we need to look at.
Maybe I would like to bring in Rohan into this debate, like to warm up his opening comments.
Yeah, I really like the topic that you chose, which is bolstering the basics, because I think in this, in the buzzwords of smart cities, basically we might end up having, as we've had for a while, an indefinite wait till when a smart city actually gets built. And if we just focus on some basics, leveraging assets that are existing, we could make our cities smarter and safer today without having to wait many years. So just a few examples that we try to we touch as wherever we go, saying that look, we've spent the last 25 years building the most comprehensive digital map data down to house address level, building level, with height information, millions of points of interest, all the roads. We've built it. I mean, it's being used by all the car companies in India. It's being used by enterprises, e-commerce companies like Flipkart or Ola's. Why doesn't the government also use this as a base instead of trying to build from scratch for governance? And on top of that, we made, because smart cities require multiple applications for various government to citizen services, for citizens to report what's happening. We offer APIs that any application can be built using this map data. And then we've talked about this real view service, which we did for this exhibition or this conference, where you can see in full 360 degree how the city looks. These assets exist, and these are the foundations that people have as part of their smart city implementations. They can leapfrog instead of having to build from scratch assets that already exist. So I'm also a big proponent of let's bolster and use the basics to build smarter cities. I mean, we've done an integration with Bhuvan, the ISRO's geoportal, whereby their imagery, which can be updated under Indian government and cities' control, is integrated with MapIndia's maps. Now that's a powerful combination to use. So I think the good thing is that the industry is working together. I mean, you're seeing private players and public players and different parts of the ecosystem working together. They're creating the demand, or they're creating the need for why cities need to become smarter. I just hope that we're equally collaborative and efficient in the how, as opposed to spending time in.
I would like to bring Bhatima out here. Like, what holds the government or the planners or the thinkers out there to adopt and quickly integrate as to what all is available? There are projects going under the Sakshat regime where industry-grade solution is already available. Why do we reinvent the wheel?
So it's very interesting that in this panel that 50% of us are from the geospatial side, and both MapMyIndia and Scient are members of Association of Geospatial Industries, both totally at other ends of the spectrum, but servicing a need which is going to be as relevant to the smart cities which are coming up on paper at the moment. The interesting thing is, I think Mr. Padonis mentioned this, there is no smart city in the world, I would hazard to say. There are smart systems. There are cities which have got smart applications being run, smart services being rendered, and these services may range from location-based navigation systems in some instances to infrastructure, transportation, utilities, telcos, which are very, very mission critical, robust, very high engagement level applications. So these do exist, and I would also say that it's not all the applications which are in our so-called smarter Western world, but very much in this, well, forget this country, in this very city, in this very neighborhood. You have a company like Noida Power, which went ahead with implementation of utility mapping and customer service integrated into their system in 2001. And you have Tata Power, but Reliance, all of them who are using utilities to cover all aspects, whether it is customer information, whether it is inventory management, whether it is power management, outage management, running the network analysis engines, everything, you name it, billing, network planning, marketing, the whole scope. But when you take a look at a smart city, what is it about? It's actually three things. And three things are the stakeholders, well, it's all about location, and how does every entity relate to its location and the consuming of the services that can be made available. So you have three stakeholders. You've got, of course, the citizens. Ultimately, it's about livability. A person should be able to plan where they want to stay, what is their real estate value, is it appreciating, can they walk somewhere, how's the navigation from there, recreation there, schooling, etc. But you also have the governance side of it. The governance is extremely critical, and especially in today's day and age, where you not only have the routine issues in terms of providing infrastructure, providing the regular walkways, highways, transportation, etc. But you also have disasters. You also need evacuation. You also need demographics about what is the for instance, if there's a disease that is being spread and things like that, or intelligent systems like your security systems, intelligent lighting on the one hand, cameras which are non-intrusive and yet very effective on the other hand. And increasingly we will see a lot more silent intrusion into our space, and questions will come up of where is private ending and where does public come up. But these are the times we live in, and these are the requirements of the times we live in, and technology and locational information there will become increasingly important because the accuracy of what is happening where becomes very critical. The moment you talk about accuracy, you need data which is very refined, very accurate, and while on technology there'll be one side to it and they can provide it, there's a cost side of it also. And that leads me to the third element, which is your businesses. Does it make business sense for people to be able to use services and use the locational intelligence to render services which are appropriate, which are accurate, which are robust, and which are scalable, and which are anticipatory. I think that is the difference. Smart work is always anticipatory, and we will not get there in one day, but we have to.
I think ma'am made a very interesting point about governance to be at the core of the smart city movement. So maybe I would like to bring in Mr. Pillai about his perspective as to how the governance and the investment part of it is building up the smart city space.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting question. And I was kind of, as you were talking about, is there a real smart city in the world? And I couldn't but help but think of a city that I lived in for about 2.5, 3 years, and that's Singapore. Right? In my view, it kind of comes closest to what my personal worldview of a smart city is. And I think that's fundamental because of 3 or 4 factors, and that's what perhaps a lot of planners and people and all of us who are working in the smart cities ecosystem should kind of look at, right? So one is clearly about laying down very well-established foundations and processes, right? Specifically, if you take a city, some of our biggest urban cities, our biggest nightmares are just that there is no process how which agencies need to engage with each other. And half the chaos and half the challenges we face in our cities is because there is no process made out. And therefore, that kind of makes the city look less cool or less smart, as you might call it. Second is technology. I think there's far too much emphasis on the cool technology. Let me create a Wi-Fi zone in a small local area network. Let me do something else, smart traffic in some place. I think all of those are necessary, and those will be the final outcomes of some very, very robust foundational work that needs to be done. Set the processes right, build the technology that will enable the processes to be work.
The foundational technology you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think the third aspect is, coming to your thing about governance, right? And the third aspect is governance. You can have the best smart technology, you can have the best practices, but if you do not have a trained workforce that is aligned with how that transition or transformation is going to happen, then I think we'll have the best smart technologies will get unused, right? And I think that's where the Singapore example comes back to mind, because it is one of those few countries in the world where the best of their graduates go and join the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't go to technology institutions, they don't go to MBA institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Government jobs on an average, I don't know all the stats, but they pay a lot more than the average private sector job, right? So if you have the best people managing your governance, which we do have, we have a lot of bright people. The questions we need to ask ourselves is, are we giving them the right environment to go and thrive and execute? So the dialogue has to shift from cool technologies to better processes, better foundational work, and how do you enable people, and make sure that the investments are channelized also into those aspects, rather than just talk about, hey, let's get the coolest technology.
I think quite an interesting perspective. I would like to bring in Mr. Sunil McKenna, because he has been integrating a lot of technologies in this geospatial domain. So what he made a very interesting distinction between cool technologies and the foundational technologies, because today it's just about the cool part of it. So how do you see it across?
It's a good point actually, that what Prashant said. At the same time, I'm just recalling myself about, if you see that as a overall, as a smart cities, why can't we divide into two parts? One is the existing, if you look at the urban part of it, where the cities are, today we are at 30%, I think, people movement from rural to cities is what it is. And then I believe it's going to be 70% of the people population moves into by 2050 or so. I think the cities are much more, a lot of residents get thrown in. Then why not we start thinking about, looking about the existing infrastructure, existing cities today, and as is, how do we really plan it out? Changing the existing is very, very difficult. We'll take it up anything in the operations part of it, or whatever that we do, or the math part of it also, I'm sure he also knows about it. If you want to correct anything, it takes a lot of time. If you want to build something from scratch, it's much more, we can either plan it out better. People do call it a greenfield and brownfield technology, the way that we use it in our day-to-day the operations part of it. So much of demand future is going to be. So why not the smart cities thinking about it? Anything new that comes out in those enterprises, the new townships coming out, how do we really plan it out? If we can come and think about the processes and connect it to him, that can be planned such a way that a new township forms, how that should be in terms of the building spaces, in terms of connectivity is concerned, energy, power. That part of it, we can start thinking that at least that particular part in the future will be good. Much more smarter that we can make. And we can also think about it, what the existing, the change that's going to come, and we should have a lot of buy-in from the groups, not from different departments and also from the residents. That is going to be a second phase. So both has to go parallelly, but this will be much faster because you see the future. People movement is much very, very important. They need to be taken care of. I saw a couple of, in terms of Netherlands, I seen they are building a new smart townships coming in, and they say there's a new smart cities going on. There's Amsterdam available. There's the areas of MS Sports available, but there's another area that's developing by the separate infrastructure companies. Now, what is this all about? They said, no, it's a new concept, much more smarter. It really makes people living much more very convenient, and the quality of life will be better, is what they say. There are plans about people movement to that particular area also. To think about that particular area, maybe that's also an area which I think we should also think that how will it be existing versus the new. And that's what my way of.
So maybe will investment alone would be the binding factor, as Mr. Padode said, that a challenge has come through and this much of money would be flowing in. So will the money alone will bind through all the foundational processes, or there has to be a paradigm shift in an approach or thinking per se?
Technology, of course, we should think about it, how we should use the money in a smarter way. I mean, that's also very important.
Okay.
Just because there's funding available, okay, there's something the government can come and then fund and take off.
So maybe I would ask Rohan as to what three I would say prescriptions you would like to give to the smart city planners. Like what should be the three prioritized aspects which they should take into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the three things that would make lives of citizens easier. Safety, efficiency, and design. It's just, so what do I mean by this? In terms of safety, I think we're seeing, I mean, kids are not safe necessarily. Road safety is a big issue, and these go back to whether the cities are designed in a smarter way, whether smarter technologies, call it foundational or call it cool. Either way, if it can make lives of citizens safer, that's what I would imagine a smarter city would look like. And Singapore is a good example of a city which is very safe. To give one example from work that we did, a few months ago we released this IoT device. In smart cities we talk a lot about IoT devices. It's a GPS-based IoT for kids, matchbox-sized device that you can give to your child, and wherever they are, on your mobile phone you can see where your child is, and if they've left school or they've reached home, you get an alert. It's called SafeMate. If those were made available to kids, to parents, to schools, or through schools, it would enhance the safety of kids. And similar analogy applies to cars. We have a product called DriveMate, which fits into the car. It's an IoT device, which does the same thing for vehicles. Efficiency. By efficiency, I'm alluding to traffic. A lot of our time gets wasted in just sitting in traffic. So if we could do a better job of alerting people as to what the current traffic conditions are on different roads, and we can help them navigate past these traffic roadblocks. So with all the tracking systems, all the GPS systems that we have in the field, we are collecting this probe data and processing that to create live traffic feeds for the cities. And we're making that available in the navigation systems we provide to car companies or in our mobile apps. And that helps consumers figure out optimally distribute themselves to reduce the traffic stress, and in general that reduces stress that people have and makes for a better city. And the last is design. I think I mean, in India we maybe don't do this design aspect in upfront. We don't focus on infrastructure upfront, and as a result our cities are kind of hodgepodge. I think we need to do a better job of designing cities, designing roads going forward. And it goes back to being able to have a real view of how the city looks like for planners. So I would recommend have a view of how the city looks like sitting in your office. Have a real view of how each road looks like, where construction is taking place, where encroachments are taking place, where the road condition is poor, and have a plan to get that fixed. And again, have that monitoring process in place. So to a lot of the municipalities, we've been talking about Real View, which is a system to capture 360-degree panoramas for the roads, and they can put out this camera on a car and collect the information and process that, and the next day know what's going on. So I mean, really quickly they know what's the real view, what's happening in the city, and that helps them design better. So those are my three prescriptions.
I think quite relevant and interesting ones. I will move on to Mr. Padode. So sir, if all the money, whatever we are asking for, is available for that matter, I think the complexity of the whole process is quite involved out there. So how do you think, if the money is there, are we lacking on the approach part of it, or the priorities part of it, or a complete perspective of the smart city or the smart systems stuff which has been talked about?
So, if money is not the challenge, I think to begin with, the first challenge is mindset. So I think maybe at the outskirts of the city, and they have to travel so much into the city every day, causing so much of traffic and inconvenience to their own lives. So now the smart city designs, as like Sidco is doing one in the Naina region, they have already made homes for 55,000 people within their new city, which will be on affordable housing kind of thing. And these guys are going to serve the city so that they don't have to, because the prices will go up. Now nobody's going to invest, and by the time it's time for them to invest, they will not have any land left. So it's about, I think, people, the way it is, you have to lay down your priorities, how you want to serve the city. Money is one part of it, but I think essentially the mindset needs to first understand that what is needed by my citizens. It was a top-down approach all along. So infrastructure was never marketed, it was just built and the citizens were supposed to use it because the grant was government's. Now the situation has come where you're building airports, toll roads, you're asking users to actually pay for it. The moment they pay for it, they demand quality. And the government was never accountable, the government officers are never held accountable. So now there is a transaction happening between citizens and the government. And citizens demand quality, and government thinks that basically they don't want to pay. It's not that they don't want to pay. They want to pay provided the quality is consistent and the service is consistently delivered. And there are examples where people are paying for airports, for toll roads, they're paying water, tanker. I mean, all these big cities we are actually paying for water. We think water is free, but actually everybody's paying for it. So mindset change, that we are here to serve, we are government servants, that serving attitude has to gradually percolate, and then you will design, because right now you are designing to actually from the sense of authority. Now you got to design from the sense of convenience, because you're serving the citizens, and that whole attitude shift will actually ensure that the cities are being designed in that manner. So you hear of any big city and first they'll build is the town hall, or they'll build the Sachivalaya or the Mantralaya, very palatial. That's the first thing they want to make a statement that we are here. I mean, how about building something for the citizens to begin with? That is not being thought. So I think that approach needs to change, and for which I don't think only the government is responsible. I think the citizens have been for far too long taking a very laid-back approach. We criticize, we meet in parties, and we discuss all these things, but nobody wants to, sort of put in some time and energy in your own society, in your own community, on your own road. I think there has to be a participatory thing if finally some change has to take place. And that's the way it's happened elsewhere also, Bogota or wherever. These movements that have happened are not just created by the government, it's participatory.
So this entire challenge or this entire participatory approach is just the first phase of it. You see that?
Yeah, it's a principal move that needs to happen.
I would like to bring in David. Like, there is a lot of bias towards kind of a greenfield project. Like, can we not patch in on the existing cities? Like, how tough it is to really make the existing habitations really smart, and what order of complications vis-a-vis because we cannot get the entire population of 1.25 billion into a new set of cities per se.
I think if we don't put a major focus on our existing infrastructure, we're making a major mistake. You have your existing cities are the heart of the country. They're the heart and soul of India. If you can put greenfield out there, but I think you need to take a long, hard look at what it is we need to do to improve the livability and the services we provide to those that have grown and built that current infrastructure we have. It's not major, and when you think about smart cities, I look at it as a process. I think Prashant mentioned it, I've heard it mentioned a couple of times this afternoon, is you put the infrastructure in place that enables your government to make smart decisions. Smart decision making leads to improved services for your constituents. And I think that's what a smart city is. It's not,
Infra as in like infra as in the brick and mortar part of it, or infra as in smart decision making?
infra as putting the systems in place, whether it be brick and mortar, whether it be technology, whether it be geospatial, putting the systems in place that provide the leadership the information they need to make smart decisions. Once they have that information, then the decision might be in a brick and mortar build of a toll road or an airport. That might be a decision. But in order to make that decision, and in order to make a smart decision, they have to have access to the information. Today, in so many societies, the information is not available in a manner that allows them to analyze it properly, to digest it. It's not accurate. They just can't make a decision based on real information, so they're making guesses. And if we can change the way we manage government, get away from guessing, get away from projects of passion, and start making smart decisions, we can reduce crime. We can improve livability. We can provide significantly better services to our constituents. We can put hospitals in the right place. We can make sure that our roads are set up in a way and traffic patterns are set up, smart decision making. But it really means that you have the infrastructure in place, and by infrastructure I mean the systems in place to provide leadership the information they need to make smart decisions. Smart decision making will lead to smart cities. And I think that's what really, that's the focus.
I think we have covered what needs to be done, what should be the priority. Maybe one of the toughest part of this concluding portion of the discussion is what is it we are not doing it right? Because that is something, these are all the textbook or the experiential aspects of it. In the current narrative, out of our individual experiences, where do you think that we are somewhere slipping, or are we really on the mark? Or where we have to bolster the basics probably? Maybe we can recapitulate that and re-emphasize that, because that is something, because such a larger movement to unfold in the country, where we also have a subsidiary mission called Amrit, where, because the foundations are almost the same. It's not the 20 ivory towers we can build up, but it has to be the whole country per se. So maybe I would start with ma'am, who is really, what is it that is not happening right, and be as candid as possible, because it has to be a real recommendation from the industry association.
So I think there are two things that you are saying here. And one is, what is it that we are doing in terms of the implementation, but ahead of that is the intent. When you intend to build 100 smart cities, 500 Amrit cities, what is the intention? And the intention was always to build in governance systems, to build in infrastructure, and put in the make sure that all the citizens' livability services were enhanced.
So is the intent rightly placed of the current?
Intent is correct. I think there are 2-3 things when you talk about this. I think a year ago, I would like to share with you, both the Geospatial AGI, Association of Geospatial Industries, and NASSCOM were invited by the Ministry of Urban Development to come up with some sort of a blueprint of what should an Indian smart city be. Also, one of the factors was that whether it is smart city, and Amrit of course was taken out of the equation, although we considered that when we were working on the study. They said that we would like it all to be brownfield, because India is a country, and that's where your Singapore example, Singapore is, despite everything, they did everything in a very planned, structured fashion, and that's an example of how, if you start from scratch, you can actually build that so-called ideal system. And of course the disparities are slightly less than what we have in India. But having said that, I would not say that it is not smarter than probably most of the world. But when we started working, one of the unique things that happened was that NASSCOM and AGI had joined hands to create, and in fact I've got a copy of the book we created, and what we titled it is Geospatially Enabled urban infrastructure and governance information system. So the reason we went in for this governance information system, if you talk about corporates, everybody works on information, informed decision making, dashboard approach, being able to see things in an instant and near real time to be able to manage. Now that is it a utopian dream? We don't think it's a utopian dream.
Is there an intent to
Intent
create
is there, and you also take a look at the NOFN, the Digital India program. There is a huge conscious effort on the part of the government to connect the whole country. When you are connecting everybody with the NOFN, you are building infrastructure from the perspective of communication. And that can be a game changer, and that is what we worked on. NASSCOM worked on the ICT infrastructure, and then AGI looked at the locational aspect and saw how the various systems could be implemented. And we took a look at all aspects, businesses, governance, and citizens. And what we also did was, we took a look at real life examples. I think the fact that you talk about geospatial I would not say is anything alien to what we are talking about. Every technology, the moment you put a locational aspect, becomes geospatial. So it is IT as well as what we talk about IT. But the only uniqueness about, let's say, the products and the technology is that while in IT you integrate a map into an application, it is a picture. But if you take it from the geospatial, it's an intelligent picture. So that's the only difference, and that's the technology's power, that it integrate disparate sources of data to come up with an intelligent layer, which you put over all your enterprise systems. So we are not saying, oh, geospatial replaces SAP. No. Geospatial empowers SAP to get the...
I think ma'am has probably given a wonderful extension of the term GIS per se, from
we do not call it
geospatial
GIS,
information
we
system.
call it geospatial because it is more than just a technology.
So GIS, governance information systems, is probably something which you are talking about, and that's where the intent has to be consolidated.
Policy is important. I think that is the one thing that nobody's really talked about. And if you're talking about intent has to be empowered in policy. If you take a look at the geospatial community, there's a national geospatial policy which is underway, and they are talking about all aspects. So today we have 5 or 6 policies. We have the remote sensing, we've got data sharing, the open maps, etc. We are now talking about a holistic policy, which is one single policy that takes care of all aspects. Because we're talking about integration at any level, you have to have the policy. The second thing is, I think you mentioned it, that it's not all from scratch. There are things which are already in place. Can we look at, and in fact at AGI, one of the recommendations we had was that pick 5 or 6 cities maybe as the pilots, and look at what each city does best. So for instance, if you want to come up with a beautiful metro or a transportation system, perhaps Delhi might be the city you would like to choose as a pilot. If you want to look at maybe the electricity, would you like to choose Mumbai? And so on. Select 5 or 6 cities, and it's not India. Barcelona has a great system. Singapore, of course, has properties and a whole lot of systems which are very smart. So can we look at different solutions? All the companies, technologies today are global. Nobody is, in silos or boundaries. And then put together replicable solutions. And then you have one smart city doing one smart solution in one, or maybe 2 in another, and look at how it can be replicated to the others. That is the important.
So you mean to conclude that the intention is there, it needs to be forced into an integrated policy deck, so that, and learning from the best practices across.
And dissemination.
And dissemination.
Because ultimately it's the ULBs who are going to do the job. And only one thing, you talked about Amrut. Amrut is made in terms of actual direction, have a shorter, it may fall short in terms of actual smartening the way you look at the 100 smart cities, but the baseline remains the same. You have to have the same common data model, and you have the aspirational data model which is common. Today's Amrut city will become a smart city sometime in the future, so you cannot design differently. That's your design. You have UK who've built in BIM. Every building has to use BIM at a governmental level. I mean, that's the kind of policies you need.
So a lot of smart city learnings will go to Amrit. That's what you're putting across?
There's no difference to my mind. It's just a sequencing.
So, what as per you is not really happening the way as you would?
Distillation. More than that, before that it was started even the mapping part of it. It's not that it's already all the things are in maps very much. And the prominence of geospatial came in the last 2 to 3 years quite heavily because when we started using for transport applications like cabs and all, we started using the visual effect of what the cab going around with mobiles, looking at it where the location is. That's really made people to use much more. Okay, it is very near to us. 2 kilometers from here. They'll come in 5 minutes. So if you apply the same thing even in the utility sector or a telecom sector, I mean there are which the networks all are in the digital mapping today, and even the smart meters are becoming in utilities power. So the way that today the people are putting on rooftops, I mean even the residents started learning a little bit, saying that okay, government is giving some subsidies. Okay, I can put on my rooftop my own energy, and then the one which is there, the smart meter again there, which it really makes what is the power coming in from the regulatory, from the government side, and then what's the power that we generate, and what is the net that's coming out and putting into the grid, and what is that saving from me, and then what that I'm doing for the society in a different way. That's really made a difference. So again, the way that it has got a technology built in the back, even the communication part of it, the meter is so smart. There is no, I think some things can be totally eliminated. There is no person comes here and take the meter reading how much is wrong. Still they are doing it today. But it's automatically through our communication Wi-Fi that will goes into servers and automatically say that okay, this is what net units has been delivered. And that type of things can be done. That is can be connected to home automation too. And then what is that we can smartly operate into the homes, and the quality of life can be better, the efficiency will improve, not only for residents.
So integrating the various utility services, the geospatial side of
ICT
it.
is the one which already we have. It's only question of a smart way of connecting things to it. That's the only thing remaining. So there are technologies that are available. So this type of ecosystem has to start. It's already there. It's a question of how fast we can do it. We're much more smartly. So and then even the governance. I think there are in the city of New York, which that we also see that she is talking about the dashboarding. The 250 departments have been integrated, and then we know which is the one which the transportation is getting failure. That is going to be a failure. This is going to be so. This all can go on single dashboard. It's all interconnected, and the efficiency of the system has improved quite a lot. So that's such things you can also implement here also. Even the trafficking for that matter. So important that I mean we are wasting almost like 2 hours, 3 hours on the day-to-day when we go. So that areas again we have some systems. There are geospatial way we can also find on the location base. So where the areas of traffic is currently available real time. Then how we should have alternate routes. Those things can be much more. We can make smart.
Mr. Pillai, you would like to have your closing remarks?
Yeah, I think in general, I think the Smart Cities program has put a kind of a strong umbrella and a central program management initiative, which I personally feel that it's good to have that because it creates in corporations we call it a program management unit, and that's what the Central Smart Cities team is doing, that program managing the initiative, directing the funds into the right people or right cities with the right ideas. I think that principally is the best way to go. So those are some of the strong positives. I think I wouldn't go far as, since we're too early in the journey, I wouldn't go far as saying what's just not working or just not being done well or whatever. But I would say that 2 or 3 things that I personally feel very strongly about is fundamentally a central government pooling in funds to build smart cities is a short-term solution, right? So cities have to find a clear way to become more sustainable on their own, right? And they can either become sustainable on their own only by increasing the revenues, realizing better revenues. Property tax could be one avenue of that. And 2 is getting citizens to actually pay for the user services. Better services will have to come with more fees, and they'll have to increase their revenue coverage of property, etc. So I think that's one important thing that cities need to think of, because it's not about let's take 500 crores every year for the next 4 years. What are you going to do with it? What will happen after year 4 if you've not started thinking about how to sustain beyond that year 4? Number 2, I think I like the point you made about best practices and different cities do. cities will really have to define what do they want to be. You can't be everything at the same time. Yeah. So for example, for Mumbai, the biggest challenge might be its traffic problem, right? So if you spend all your money in doing 10 things, or you spend your money in doing one thing in a focused way, or two things which will really make Mumbai a more livable city at the end of a 4-year period. Mumbai is not a smart city, by the way, in the scheme of things. I think that's going to make a bigger impact to citizens' lives, and then get people to start thinking about that we have faith in the governance mechanism and we can pay more user services to this particular mechanism as against paying it today. So I think that's the two. And number three is because personally I believe we need to involve private sector a lot more. Not because the private sector is better or worse for any reason, but we've seen some of the again, I take the example of Bombay, right, where the metro project done by Reliance, and I think it's a joint venture, right? I think some kind of joint venture. Yeah. So, it's incredible, right? That metro took a bit of procedural delay, but finally it's kind of connected to disparate parts of the city, which earlier used to take an hour and a half to traverse, and got that down to 15-20 minutes. Look at how much impact it's made to citizens' lives, right? So, can we involve private sector beyond just high-flying projects like airports and metros, and we see the impact of service element there when we go to those airports? Can we get them into fundamental areas like sanitation, building better roads, and security, for example? Can we bring them on a larger scale that makes it attractive for large companies to come in and say, hey, I want to come in and support.
But what policy stops the private sector in adopting for such foundational aspects?
There isn't, right? If you look at specific, I'm not a policy expert on this, but if you look at the specifics, is we invite the private sector when there are projects we think we don't know how to do it, right? So obviously we can't build a metro on our own, so we create a SPV and say, invite bids, best person wins, gets the best coaches, and does it, right? But why do we believe we know how to maintain roads very well? Is it the corporation's responsibility to maintain roads? No, it's the corporation's responsibility to govern. Maybe there is a private sector company there that knows how to maintain roads effectively and efficiently and run it efficiently as well, right? So it's pretty much about this whole thing about where should the state be involved in and where should the...
So it's probably what Mr. Padode talked about, the preparedness of the citizenry at the local level, which has to define the local governance, the direction of it.
It's a combination. Right? It's a combination. Neither will the citizens be able to do that by themselves, but they have to. The opportunities given to them to get involved need to be taken, and I think the SPV route, which they have been mandated in the policy now, which actually sort of mandates that there has to be an involvement of the citizen group member along with this. Nearly 15 million people have actually participated.
So you mean the advent of social media has helped the smart city revolution in a big way? The participative governance part of it.
So it's actually a check and balance as well. The moment you see something going wrong, so you can use technology to make citizens reporters in a sense, whether there are potholes, whether there is crime, whether people would like to participate, they want to keep their communities safe, their families safe. So there can be this kind of there has to be a two-way process. That will be more sustainable actually.
And you made a very important, very interesting observation that the, people have moved from a sense of authority to a sense of, I would say, convenience or responsibility to the citizens at large. How much of it has happened? Can you?
No, it's happened very little. Actually,
very
it should
little.
happen much more. And I think people are just about realizing that this is the way it goes. Because if the administrators are seeing, and there are good, smart officers, some of the cities, and actually you'll see that city leadership is getting a chance now to demonstrate that they have a vision. So there are smart municipal officers now who are getting a chance to never had so far to actually demonstrate their vision, their capability of execution, etc. And they're going to become poster boys.
Which was earlier not present. It was all top down.
Who knew about it? In fact, in India, you go somewhere and nobody says that this place was built by this architect. This was built by this politician and that was built by that politician. Because obviously the politician was in power. But which architect has built what? So that pride with what you build and all that, which is there prevalent in other countries, Will come in only when there is a sort of approach that I am going to build something and people are going to appreciate. And now there are forums for appreciation for that sort.
David, are we on the right track? Is the enthusiasm of Mr. Padode really rightly placed from your vast experience?
I think you are. I mean, in India, you've started the process, and you have to start the process. You've put the funding, you set the funding aside. He was very careful that funding is a part of it. But he's also started the process to get people thinking. By taking the competitive approach, people not only had a chance to look at what they thought might be good, but they also looked at stuff that they thought may have fallen short. So you've narrowed your efforts into those that had the clearest focus. And what I think you're going to see from that is the ability for some of these cities that have been shortlisted and those that are going to begin an implementation. What you're going to see is that there are going to be some very creative strategies out there, and you're going to see the movement toward, you're going to start seeing improved livability in these cities. You're going to see some very good strategies come together to improve the way the cities are operated. So I think you're definitely on the right track. And I'm excited to see what's the process that it's going through and what you may see in 2 years.
So we just have to stay put and just to...
Oh, no, staying put is death. I think you need to continue moving forward and moving forward hard. I think that's how you've gotten to where you are now. And I think you need to continue and push hard. But the key is you have to push these individuals, you have to push city leaders, you have to push the architects of these solutions, you have to push the private companies that you're going to work with to create this. This is a partnership. This can't happen by putting a tender out there and awarding it to a company and say, go get it. This has got to be a partnership. The government is going to have to work with the corporations and the private sector companies that bid on these projects. It's going to have to be strong oversight. Regardless of what the project is, whether it's a road project, whether it's infrastructure project in terms of brick and mortar, whether it's a technology project, you have to work together because it won't succeed in the silo approach. It has to be a team. So I think we're on the right track. I think there are a lot of good things happening here, and I'm excited to see where the outcome is going to be.
Well, you know, in the democratic setup we live in, the aspirations are quite high and people really want quick fixes. And what you're probably suggesting is a slow and steady, all-rounded process. So what in your view is the real time frame where a visible transformation would start looking?
I think you're going to see a couple of different approaches. And the key is quick fix. I think Prashant said it also. Quick fix is not a sustainable fix. It is a Band-Aid. And the Band-Aids come off and you start bleeding again. What you need to do is you need to put something in place that's long-term. But that doesn't mean you can't see the results immediately. It's all about proper planning, proper implementation for long-term success. So I think there are a couple of different avenues that could be a part of this, but again, it's up to the cities. You know, the excitement here now is to find out what the cities are thinking. What is their plan? What are they going to look to do? So I'm very interested to see what they're going to come up with.
Thanks, David. I think in this short 60-minute of interaction, we probably have covered the entire span of the smart city conversation, right from the baseline of it, the citizenry, the city leaderships, what Mr. Padode talked about, and Madam Sinha talked about governance at the core of smart cities. And what Sir talked about is how the cities can fund it sustainably. Funding is important, but not every year we can just go on and with begging balls and just put it across, and giving them imaginations how they can sustain themselves. And Rohan obviously has put up some of the very fine-tuned ways how technological products can really gear up the whole revolution. At least we can start experiencing the smart cities aspect by using his IoT devices or something which can help us navigate through. And David has really given us the right confidence that probably we are on the right track, and probably one of the biggest example of it, the government stopped the funding for one long year. In the budget of 2014, they had allocated some 7,000 crores, which they have given back again in this budget yesterday. So for one long year, they went back to fix the basics. So somewhere or the other, the industry is saying the same. The advocacy groups are also happy about it. Probably we are on a positive trajectory, a northward spiral. So thanks a lot for joining us this evening for this roundtable discussion, and maybe some of these recommendations we'll be putting up together and sending it across to the people who matter and who are driving the project management unit. What Sir said, it has been put up really very well. So thank you all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, very well done. Thank you.